It's another edition of the Brett Allen Show, and today we have a very special guest. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. We're talking to legendary Jeopardy contestant Brad Rutter, who is also a part of a fun game show, ABC's The Chase. We have so many questions here. I have so many questions. Brad, thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brett, and questions are my business. So I think we'll get
Yeah,
along.
I think we will too. Well, let's start out with The Chase because this is just, I tell you, game shows are so much fun, especially um, these types. I mean, they're all, I think, question based, but this one is a lot different in the sense of, you're pitting contestants against each other, but also against the likes of yourself and other very smart people, way smarter than me. So let's talk about this show. How did this all come about for you? Because if I understand, this is sort of I don't like the term reboot, but sort of a retelling, redoing of a British game show. Very similar, but there's also a lot of differences, I think, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, well, my story with the chase starts back in 2012 when Fox shot a pilot back then to bring it to America, and they ended up not picking it up. And then GSN picked it up with the Beast and ran it for a couple years. And then at the Goat tournament, for Jeopardy, that did such great ratings that they wanted to get Ken and James and me back on as soon as possible. And somebody suggested, oh, hey, why not the chase with those three guys as the chasers? And that's sort of how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really, really good. And, I was actually watching with my son. He just turned 7. So we're kind of watching it, and he's watching me get all riled up and excited about watching these people come on. I think there's something special about game shows, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like it just kind of brings everybody together. It brings the family together and allows everybody to just kind of hang out and have a good time. Um, and it just makes for good entertainment, I think. Um, were you able to get a lot of this done, like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, Brad? How did it all sort of pan out for you?
No, it's been all pandemic. So we have never been on set without, PCR tests and masks and no audience. So if we ever do get to have an audience, that might change some things and make it a different experience. But yeah, so far, all we know, it's pandemic filming.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, let's talk about your background because I think most people would know you and recognize you from Jeopardy, obviously. But what was it that, well, let me back up a little bit because, these types of shows obviously require great, at least for me, again, my perspective, memorization and just really a lot of mental focus and things like that. Just as a whole, what has your experience been like having been a part of shows like Jeopardy and The Chase? And really, we joked a little bit, questions are your game, literally. So let's talk about that and sort of a two-part question here, sort of your experience, what it's like, and then also really sort of how this even began to become of interest to you going on Jeopardy, and then obviously, continue on with projects like this.
Well, I think I could probably answer both of those with the same story. So my parents had been big fans of Jeopardy back when Art Fleming hosted it in the 60s and 70s. And that was on during the day. So my dad would always tell me stories about being homesick from school watching Jeopardy. So obviously, when they brought it back with Alex, they started watching from the beginning, and we would watch every night, and I would watch it with them. And by the time I got to high school, I realized that wow, hey, I know most of the answers here, so maybe I should try to get on the show one day. Ever since I was a little kid, I've just enjoyed knowing things and remembering things that sort of catch my interest along the way. And I like to think I'm kind of a curious person, so I have a pretty diverse set of interests, and so that helps a lot. So yeah, I read a lot, I watch a lot of documentaries, that kind of thing, and for whatever reason, the information will just stick in my head. And if you ask me about it, even years later, it'll be right there, and I can recall it. So I think you sort of have to have a trivia brain to do it professionally. That's not to say that you can't work at things and get better at things, but You can't really just learn everything you need to know to go on a quiz show by sitting down and reading like some sort of like book of knowledge. You have to sort of pick it up here and there as you go through your daily life.
So essentially, an overnight success that takes years to get
Yeah,
to
I,
where
I
you're at.
realized I've been going on Jeopardy for 21 years now, so it's making
Yeah,
me
it's
feel
just
old.
now we're getting. Yeah, we're just now getting to see you on there and competing. It's interesting. I'm very curious about the idea and the concept of memorization and remembering things, and you actually let us in on some insider knowledge. It's not a matter of, or it could be, waking up one day and going, I want to audition for this, but really it's a lifelong practice of just picking up information from here and there. Like, I have a good knowledge, at least I think, of pop culture, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm ready for Jeopardy necessarily.
Well, the other thing too is that all of the well, I hesitate to say all, but most of the academic stuff you need to know on quiz shows is stuff you learn in high school.
Yeah.
So I just paid attention in high school, and that was a big advantage for me. But yeah, it's mostly just being interested in things and remembering things that you come across.
So, what does it take to actually get on the show of Jeopardy, or even a game show like this, like The Chase, which is what we're focusing on? Like, what is the process for somebody who, is it a long process? Do you have several steps that you have to go through groups of producers and things before you actually make it onto, let's say, live television and that sort of thing?
Yes. So these days, they give an online test for Jeopardy. Like that's all I
Okay.
know because I didn't have to audition to be on the Chase. Um, but so I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure it's similar, but I'm not exactly sure what the process is for casting contestants there. But for Jeopardy, they give you there's an online test that you can take anytime. And it's 50 questions, and if your score is good enough, they'll put you in the pool. And then when they think they might want you, they give you a Zoom call these days, and they have you take the another test live, just to make sure you didn't cheat on the first one. And yeah, then they'll ask you like TV casting type questions, like what would you do with the money, and they'll see how you are on camera, and then they'll say, okay, we'll let you know, and then they'll either ask you to be on the show or they won't.
Yeah, that's interesting. They want to vet, I'm sure, because I mean, who would not want to be on Jeopardy, of course, and then television, period. But then to kind of, oh, I made it through this first step. Well, let's put yourself to the test, literally, and see how well you do in that sort of thing. Because I imagine, even as you just mentioned, you have to just have a real depth of knowledge going way back, years and decades, literally. So if anybody's listening and they think that they should not pay attention in school, for whatever odd reason that might be, listen to us, because it's, you never know, you might wind up on Jeopardy or The Chase, one of
Well,
these
there are
days.
other good reasons to pay attention in
Yes,
school,
of
but that
course.
is one of them.
Yeah, obviously, of course, getting good grades and continuing on with education. Don't come after me, people. You know what I mean. It's just kind of like one of those long types of things. I'm very curious. Growing up, you mentioned that you had just a general curiosity of knowledge and information and that sort of thing. On a side note of education and learning and memory, for those of us who are wanting to sort of improve those skill sets or maybe tone them up a little bit, do you have any advice, Brad, for people who might want to just do that, as kind of coming from an educational perspective here, and just really toning up their memory and remembering things and best practices maybe that you've even experienced, over the years personally?
Well, there's a certain. I mean, I'm not exactly contradicting myself, but I said there wasn't, one book you could read, but there is sort of a canon of quiz show knowledge that they like to ask about. So if you watch enough quiz shows, you can get a feel for the kind of things that tend to come up a lot, which will also give you a feel for your strengths and weaknesses, the stuff you know and the stuff you don't. So my advice would be to focus on the stuff you don't know very well. Go on some Wikipedia deep dives. Maybe make some flashcards and try to go through them. And when I do that, I put the ones I get right off to the side, and then put the one I got wrong back at the back of the pack, and keep going through it that way until so you get some intermittent reinforcement for the stuff that you didn't know right away. But yeah, that you can figure out sort of what you need to know, and then I wouldn't say if you have no knowledge you can get it all, but the stuff that you might not know as well as some other stuff you can definitely work on.
Yeah, I tell you, I just again I find this all very fascinating, just the idea of what you do generally speaking, because when I watch a show like Jeopardy or The Chase and I see people answering these questions, you know, I think for me personally, there's probably a very small percentage that I actually know, and that's just based off like association, if that makes any sense. Like, oh, well, that would make sense here and make sense there. When you're on a show like, The Chase or the Jeopardy, and these contestants are either pitted against you, like Jeopardy, you're competing for money and prizes, but on the Chase, their job is to answer questions, and you guys are kind of going back and forth like that. Do you kind of find yourself going, um I'm trying to think of the way to ask this question. Is it challenging for you, and I'm not leading the witness, but to kind of go that this person, come on, like, this is pretty obvious, or is it just one of those situations where you have to find yourself outside of all of that and go, I'm here for a specific purpose, and really, my job is to ask the questions. Does that question make sense at all? Sort of kind of dividing the line here a little bit and going, okay, here
Yeah.
I'm a host versus like a contestant, or you know what I mean? Just it's kind of a fun question, really, more than anything.
Well, I think it's sort of like golf, where they say, you're not playing the other players, you're playing the course.
Yeah.
So I always find myself like I'm just focusing on every individual question. That's the only thing I have any control over. So I think that's probably why I've done so well, is being able to tune everything else out and just focus on that one moment, and then good or bad, just letting it pass and moving on to the next one.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. I like that's a very good way to answer that. I love it. Well, this show is just a lot of fun, and again, if people haven't had the chance to watch it yet, I highly recommend it. One last question, Brad. Again, this has just been a lot of fun, sort of kind of getting behind the scenes a little bit about how these shows work and things like that. What is some of the best advice that you have ever been given, whether it be the past or currently, that has sort of helped sustain you a little bit and kind of kept you going, just on this trajectory of everything that you've accomplished?
Well, one thing, and this actually ties back into what I was talking about before. One thing my dad told me when I was young was like, you can seem a lot smarter than you really are if you just pay attention. And I've found that to be very, very true on a ton of different levels. It sort of comes naturally to me too. But just going through life, and even just driving on the freeway, it's amazing how much people are just not paying attention to what they're doing, or their surroundings or anything like that. So if you can just make yourself pay attention to things, you're going to have a big edge on most of the population.
Yeah, I love that. And when you're out in public, do people recognize you from Jeopardy and things like that and want to come up and ask you questions or quiz you? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, why did you flub this question? I don't know. Just, you know what I mean? Like, because people obviously would know you
Yeah,
from
they'd have to
that,
be pretty hardcore to ask about a specific question I flubbed. But, so I can't say that's ever happened, but one cool thing is that, I'm used to getting like, "Hey, Jeopardy!" And now I get like, "Hey, Jeopardy! Hey, I love The Chase too," which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You see the ratings and you know people are watching, but it's nice to have that feedback in real time. But yeah, people do try to stump me, which I enjoy, because there's either 2 ways it can go. I can either really impress them, or I can learn something I didn't know. So, either way, it's a bonus.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And again, I think the reason why shows like this and other shows, other game shows that have been rebooted or reimagined and things like that, like Card Sharks or whatever, any of these types of game shows, it's just because they're good. Like, they're really, really good. And family can watch them, obviously. But really, there's just, it seems a lot of thought and a lot of concern and care is put into them. And shows like The Chase, I think that's why the ratings do so well. And I mean, you have really good contestants on there too. It's just interesting to see how smart some of these people are. It's mind blowing, literally, for me.
Yeah, it's really fun. Like we've done a really good job of getting really fun, smart contestants for the chase, which makes the show just better on in a competitive aspect, but also just in an entertainment aspect too. So like game show contestant coordinators, it's an art, not a science, and the people who are good at it are really good at it, and I'm always really impressed with them. Jeopardy too.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because when you watch them, obviously, it's not reality television like in the state understanding that we might have, but really, you're looking for a lot of great personalities, great stories, and it's just fun to watch all of you kind of go head to head a little bit with the people
Yeah,
that are on there.
and actually, that made me think of something too. Is some more advice I'd give if you were trying to get on a quiz show is let your personality show. That's what they're looking for. Like the test is to know whether you know the stuff, and if you do, now they're just casting a TV show, so they want to see how you are on camera and if you're going to bring your personality to it. And so my usual advice is just be yourself, but more so. Just amp it up a little bit. You don't have to jump up and down like this isn't Wheel of Fortune. You know, although that probably wouldn't hurt now that I think about it. But you don't have to be that excitable. But you should bring some energy to it.
I love it. This is a lot of fun, everybody. The Chase, which is now available to watch on ABC. Be sure to check out Brad and all the other amazing people, all the goats from Jeopardy. And if you've never watched a single episode of Jeopardy, you can start with Brad's and all the other people. It's just very fascinating and impressive what you all do. It's just a lot of fun.
Thank you. Just don't watch the really old ones where I was fat.
There you go. Brad, thanks for hanging out with us today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brett. Nice talking to you.